afternoons with her kids, the kind of memories that live forever in family albums. But instead of a vacation, her children would get something else. News headlines, sirens, a horror story. Because within days, their mother, a beloved model, influencer, and young entrepreneur, would vanish. And what was later discovered wasn't just heartbreaking, it was monstrous. This is the story of Abby Choi and how a trip to Disneyland turned into one of the most chilling murder cases in recent memory. She walked the runways, graced fashion magazines, sat front row at Paris Fashion Week. Abby Choi wasn't just a model, she was a rising icon in Hong Kong's elite social scene. At only 28, she had it all: fame, beauty, success. But beneath the glow of her curated Instagram feed, something darker lingered. Abby had once married into a wealthy traditional family, the Kwongs, but behind closed doors, that relationship had soured. The divorce was messy, the money even messier. Still, Abby chose grace over conflict. She supported her ex-husband's family, even helping them financially. She was raising children, running businesses, building an empire. She had moved on, or so it seemed. Because what happened next would become one of the most horrifying, brutal crimes Hong Kong had ever seen. It was February 21st, 2023. Abby had appointments, modeling deals, charity work, and a meeting with her former brother-in-law, Anthony. He had offered to drive her to a school to pick up her daughter. She got into the car, smiled, messaged her assistant, and then silence. Her phone went off. No one could reach her. Her assistant grew worried. Hours passed, then a day. On February 22nd, a missing persons report was filed. To the public, it looked like a tragic disappearance. But those close to her knew something was very wrong. Abby never just disappeared. She never left her children, she never missed work, and most chillingly, her last known location was nowhere near the school. 2 days later, on February 24th, police made a gruesome discovery in a 3-story rental house in Tai Po, a remote village in the New Territories. The house was rented by Abby's former in-laws. Inside, police found body parts in a refrigerator, a pot of human soup, and a meat grinder covered in blood. Human remains, believed to be Abby's.
The investigators were stunned. There was no sign of forced entry, no sign of outside involvement. This wasn't a robbery. It wasn't a random act. It was methodical, calculated, premeditated. A full forensic team descended upon the house. What they found was more like a slaughterhouse than a home. The suspects? Abby's ex-husband Alex Kwong, his brother Anthony Kwong, their father and mother. All arrested. Let that sink in. The very people Abby continued to financially support had allegedly murdered and dismembered her. Alex Kwong had a history of shady business dealings. He was wanted for fraud. Anthony had a short fuse. The father, a former police officer, allegedly orchestrated the entire cover-up. Their motive? Simple: money. Abby had planned to sell a luxury property worth tens of millions, but it was under the name of her ex-father-in-law, and she wanted it transferred back. That demand may have cost her life. When the news broke, it shook Hong Kong to its core. A popular model dismembered, her remains found in pots and refrigerators. Her killers? People she once called family. Social media exploded, fans mourned, protesters gathered outside the court demanding justice, #Justice for Abby trended worldwide, and yet, questions still remained. How long had they planned it? How could a mother, a father, a brother all take part in such barbarity? And the most haunting question of all, was Abby still alive when they started cutting? The house in Tai Po, where Abby's remains were found, had no CCTV. It was rented under Anthony Kwong's name just a few weeks earlier, quietly, discreetly. The neighbors didn't notice anything strange until police swarmed the area. Inside, the house was cold, clean, too clean, as if someone had tried to erase what happened. But blood has a way of leaving traces, and investigators, they knew what to look for. In the kitchen, large cooking pots, a chainsaw hidden in a black trash bag, human tissue in drains, Abby's legs and ribs wrapped in plastic, and chillingly, a human skull was missing. The search for Abby's skull became a symbol of the brutality of this murder, a symbol of the inhumanity of her killers. Days turned into weeks, and still, no sign of it. Police dredged through water, sifted through landfill, and searched nearby hills. The Kwong family wasn't talking. They offered no remorse. In court, they looked calm, cold, like they had already made peace with what they'd done. For Abby's family, it was torture. How do you bury your daughter without her face? How do you tell your grandchildren what happened to their mother?
The media began broadcasting Abby's modeling photos next to gruesome crime scene images. The contrast was jarring. One moment, she's glowing in a Dior dress at Paris Fashion Week. The next, her limbs laid bare in a sterile crime scene photo. But Abby's story wasn't just about her death. It was about her life. She was more than a victim. She was a mother of 4, a self-made woman in a ruthless world. Behind the fame was someone deeply human, gentle, generous, and trusting to a fault. That trust would be her undoing. As the Kwong family sat in jail, the case entered a legal nightmare. Alex Kwong, the ex-husband, suddenly claimed he was too sick to attend trial. Anthony tried to argue he was just following orders. The father, a former cop, kept silent, clinging to legal technicalities. And the mother? She insisted she knew nothing. Meanwhile, defense attorneys began trying to delay the trial, arguing over mental fitness, requesting additional time to review evidence. Each delay drove Abby's family deeper into despair. Justice, it seemed, was being slowly buried, just like Abby had been. Outside the courtroom, anger grew. Hundreds gathered, holding candles and posters. Some held signs that read, "She trusted them. Don't let them walk free." This was not just murder. This was evil. In Hong Kong's tightly controlled media landscape, Abby's case broke through. It was no longer just a local crime. It was a national wound, a tale of betrayal, brutality, and broken trust. And as the trial loomed closer, the world was watching, waiting to see if Hong Kong would deliver justice for Abby Choi. March 2023. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, family, strangers holding back tears. And in the defendant's box, 4 people: Alex Kwong, Anthony Kwong, Jenny Lee, Kwong Kao. No emotion, no apology, just silence. Prosecutors painted a chilling picture. This wasn't a crime of passion, it was a calculated execution. They argued that Abby was lured to that house under the pretense of discussing her daughter's schooling. Once inside, they said, she was ambushed, beaten, killed. Then, her body was dismembered to cover it up. The courtroom was still. The horror of the details left people stunned. According to police, the murder wasn't spontaneous. Weeks before, Anthony had purchased gloves, masks, raincoats, plastic sheets, and even meat cleavers. The house was rented in advance, a place where screams couldn't be heard. One of the most horrifying findings, they had drilled holes in the windows for ventilation because they knew what they planned would smell. This wasn't desperation, this was premeditated horror. When police laid out the evidence, it felt like a screenplay for a horror film. But this wasn't fiction. This was Abby's reality. Abby's 4 children, now orphaned in the worst possible way. 2 were from her marriage to Alex Kwong, 2 from her second relationship. They were too young to understand everything, but they understood enough to ask, "Where is Mommy?" Her current partner, Chris Tam, was shattered. He had been in Paris when it happened. He rushed back, heartbroken, furious, lost. Now, he is raising the children Abby loved so deeply, fighting to protect them from the world's cruelty and from the story that haunts their mother's name.
The motive? It all pointed back to money. Abby had recently sold a luxury property in Kadori Hill. Even though it was meant for the children's future, it had been held under the Kwong family's name. They feared she was about to cut them out. Alex Kwong, drowning in gambling debt and multiple lawsuits, Anthony, angry he was losing access to Abby's financial support, the father, ex-police, used to control and power. When Abby tried to reclaim what was hers, they decided she had to be erased. As the trial continued, the world watched with horror and heartbreak. Fashion circles held vigils, models wore black ribbons at events in Paris and Milan. Social media exploded with the hashtag Justice for Abby. It wasn't just about her death, it was about what it represented, how jealousy, greed, and hatred could destroy someone who had done nothing but shine. People who had never met Abby cried for her because she could have been any of us, someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's friend.
Before her death, Abby had been planning a trip.
A family vacation, time away from the cameras, the shows, the spotlights, just peace with her children. She never made it. Instead, her final journey was through headlines, through courtrooms, through the dark corners of the internet, where her name would become a symbol. A reminder that beauty doesn't protect you, success doesn't protect you, even kindness doesn't protect you. What the autopsy revealed chilled everyone to the bone. Abby didn't just die. She suffered. There were signs of blunt force trauma to the head, bruising, struggle. But the most haunting detail? Her lower body was never found. They had taken everything from her, even the dignity of a complete goodbye. The world learned that evil wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was methodical, quiet, disguised behind smiling faces and family dinners. Investigators also arrested a fifth person, a 47-year-old woman, friend of Kwong's brother. She wasn't family, but she allegedly helped cover it up, helped hide parts, clean up, stay silent. This wasn't just betrayal by blood, it was betrayal by choice. And the more the public dug into the case, the more questions surfaced. Who else knew? Who else helped? Why didn't anyone stop it? Though Abby is gone, she left behind something no one could erase. Her children, her brand, her grace. The fashion houses she worked with paid tribute in silence, launching collections in her honor. Her boutique shut down temporarily, but her closest friends made sure the brand's final images, her last photo shoots, were printed in memorial. In every image, Abby smiled, not knowing what waited for her, not knowing that people she once called family were planning her end. But her smile lives on, stronger than their violence, brighter than their shadows. Hong Kong's justice system moved quickly by its standards. All 4 main suspects were charged with murder. But trials take time. Appeals, evidence, delays. Still, the people of Hong Kong watched, demanding justice. Posters went up in shops. Murals appeared in alleyways. The city refused to forget Abby. Because if justice could be silenced in her case, what hope was left for anyone else? Abby's death didn't just shatter her family. It shook Hong Kong to its core. Candlelight vigils lined the streets of Kowloon. Strangers left flowers outside police stations. Social media was flooded with hashtags, artwork, and memories. Even those who had never met her felt the weight of what had happened, because this wasn't just a tragedy. It was a betrayal of trust, of humanity. The kind of story you hope only exists in fiction, but this time, it was real.
Abby's children, they were too young to understand the horror, too innocent to grasp what had been taken from them. Reports said Abby had arranged future guardianship, ensuring that her kids would be protected from the very people who destroyed her. The court later awarded custody to her current partner's family, people she trusted. people she believed would keep her children safe. It was the only small piece in a storm of heartbreak. After the arrest, police revisited the crime scene, the rented 3-story village house in Taipo. Inside, meat grinders, saws, human tissue, and chillingly, Abby's skull in a soup pot. No one could understand it. How could anyone go so far? The very walls of the house seemed to whisper with darkness. What once was a home had become a chamber of horror. Neighbors claimed they had heard nothing unusual, just silence. And in that silence, evil bloomed. Abby wasn't just a model, she was a mother, a businesswoman, a visionary. Her Instagram was filled with fashion, laughter, and love. But behind those images was a woman balancing fame and family, always trying to do the right thing. In interviews, she spoke softly, kindly. She was never boastful, only grateful. Grateful to be living a life she had once only dreamed of, a life that others, consumed by jealousy, would one day try to erase. As the case moved into courtrooms, the world watched. Cameras outside Hong Kong's High Court flashed as suspects were let in. No remorse. No tears. Just blank faces and bowed heads. Defense attorneys argued for reduced charges, citing mental health, family conflict, financial stress. But the prosecution held firm. This was cold, calculated murder. A trial was set. Witnesses summoned. Evidence stacked high. The public demanded more than just jail time. They wanted recognition of who Abby was, and the monsters that stole her life. As the courtroom filled with reporters, a new voice began to rise, not from lawyers or detectives, but from the public. Hong Kong citizens, especially women, spoke out against domestic violence, toxic family dynamics, and the price women pay for success. Activists marched in Abby's name. A petition called for life imprisonment for the perpetrators. And across the world, one message echoed. Justice for Abby Choi. What happened to her wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was a societal wound. Abby's mother, once quiet, now became the protector her daughter no longer could be. At a memorial, she clutched her granddaughter's hand and whispered through tears, "Mommy's an angel now." The pain was unbearable. She had trusted the Kwongs. She had invited them into birthdays, family dinners, celebrated Lunar New Year together. And yet they had slaughtered her child. No amount of jail time would bring Abby back, but silence was no longer an option. Abby Choi may be gone, but her name would not fade. Her fashion collaborations saw renewed attention. Young models dedicated runway appearances in her honor, and her children, now under full-time care, carried her blood, her smile, her strength. A scholarship fund was started in her name, offering opportunities to young women entering fashion and design. Because Abby had always believed in lifting others. Even after her death, she was still giving life. In court, prosecutors painted the chilling picture. The crime had been premeditated, not spontaneous, not a fight gone wrong. The Kwong family had rented that house 2 weeks before the murder. They had bought the freezers, the knives, even the raincoats in advance. They didn't just want Abby gone. They wanted to erase her. Why? Greed. Because Abby refused to let them steal the property. Because she had moved on from a toxic ex. Because she had become more successful without them. They couldn't stand it. So they did the unthinkable. Months have passed. Yet, in Hong Kong, the story of Abby Choi still lingers. In the flowers outside the courthouse, in the murals sprayed across buildings, in the headlines of every major newspaper. People light candles. People whisper prayers. People say her name like a vow. You will not be forgotten. And for every woman who rises in her career, for every mother doing her best, Abby Choi's story stands as a reminder that the brightest lights often cast the darkest shadows, but the world remembers who they were. April 2023. The Hong Kong courtroom was packed, not just with lawyers and family, but with reporters, protesters, and silent mourners. The defendants appeared cold. Alex Kwong kept his head down. His brother and father barely looked up. The stepmother, stone-faced. Charges read aloud: murder, obstruction of justice, perverting the course of law. Abby's parents sat just rows away. Her photo rested beside them, a radiant smile hauntingly out of place in a courtroom of death. Prosecutors revealed what the police had found: DNA in the meat grinder, blood-stained raincoats,
Abby's skull, with hair still attached, her ribs, broken, a large soup pot, once boiling, now silent. You could feel the courtroom hold its breath. This was no ordinary murder. This was ritualistic, personal, vengeful. Even seasoned reporters wept. Some jurors had to look away. A crime so brutal, it made the city of 7 million feel violated. Why? Why did a family destroy a woman who once sat across from them at dinner? The answer was money. Abby had planned to sell a luxury apartment, one she had generously put in her ex-father-in-law's name to avoid inheritance taxes. She still trusted them. But when she tried to transfer it back, they snapped. Alex Kwong was drowning in debt. His father, bitter and broke. And Abby, to them, was the golden goose who dared take back what was hers. So instead of fighting in court, they chose murder. From the US to the UK, from Paris to Seoul, the world watched Abby's case unfold. True crime forums lit up. TikTokers made videos mourning her life. Hashtags like #Justice for Abby Choi trended for weeks. For many, she wasn't just another news story. She was the modern woman's nightmare. Trusted too easily, loved too deeply, killed too violently. And the question remained, could this happen to anyone? Abby's story became a mirror, a symbol, a warning. Outside the courthouse, protesters held candles, signs, and her portrait. Her life mattered. Abby was love, not greed. They demanded life sentences. They demanded policy changes to protect women. They demanded justice that wasn't quiet or delayed. Inside, her family spoke with dignity. They didn't scream. They didn't curse. They just asked one thing. Please don't let her death be in vain. Abby's friends released voice notes she had sent just days before her murder. In one, she talked about her kids' piano lessons. In another, she laughed about taking them to Disneyland. She sounded happy, hopeful, alive. You could hear the sparkle in her voice, the sound of a mother planning her weekend, not her funeral. Those recordings became sacred, to her children, to her parents, to a world that had come to love her too late.
But even with arrests and gruesome evidence and an airtight motive, something still felt unfinished. Why did none of the neighbors hear anything? Did more people help cover it up? Could such a murder happen without someone else knowing? Rumors swirled. Some said the stepmother may have tried to flee. Others believed someone tipped off police, quietly, anonymously. But most disturbing of all, some questioned whether Abby felt something coming. Because in her last Instagram post, she wrote, "Grateful for everything in life. Even the storms, they clear the path." Abby Choi was many things: a fashion icon, a businesswoman, a socialite. But most of all, she was a daughter, a sister, a mother of 4. And despite the horror of her final moments, the world remembers her not for how she died, but for how she lived. Her elegance, her kindness, her strength. Today, her face hangs on murals in Hong Kong. Memorials have been held across cities. Strangers who never knew her speak her name with tears because Abby's death became everyone's heartbreak. For Jessica's to title of a woman who trusted too much and paid with her life. But we are not just here to mourn her. We are here to demand answers, to shine light in the darkest places, to make sure her killers never sleep easy, and to honor Abby Choi by never letting her be forgotten. If this story touched your heart, please support her family's call for justice. Comment below, share her story, and don't forget to like and subscribe so that her voice echoes far beyond the silence of that rented village house.
Justice for Abby, until the very end.